Welcome back to Beating a Dead Horse. As always, I am your host, Sean McKinda.
And I am your host, Jackson Keller.
And if you are one of the lovely people joining us live, you might get a little bit of a benefit, like a special bonus. It's not a benefit.
A gift. A gift can be rejected.
Yes. For you see, Jackson and I both have been not in the best health of the past couple of days here. So we're both kind of getting over sickness, which means that if you are listening to this in the recorded version, I've probably edited out the sounds of us hacking up a lung. If you are watching this live, you get benefits of us turning away from the microphones as much as we possibly can, but still probably hearing us go all the time. So sorry in advance to the live viewers. You're welcome to the recorded people.
Sean, would you say that we've been as sick as a dog ending?
Oh.
Yeah, got him!
It's because that's one of the possible endings of Silent Hill 2.
Famous meme ending of video game Silent Hill 2, which we're discussing today as part of Beating a Dead Horse Live, our monthly video game show.
But we should clarify that too. We technically did not have this last month, so instead we're doing 2 in October, because it's October now, which means it's spooky month.
Time for spooky Halloween. That was nothing.
It absolutely was not. But we do have 2 Halloween games, 2 spooky games we're going to be playing this month, and a bunch of spooky content, I believe. I mean, the scariest thing is next week, because we're talking about Joker. But
make sure you go to the theater in your fucking ghillie suit.
But that's not what we're talking about now. Let's fucking talk about Silent Hill 2. And I'm gonna, because I know where this conversation is going, I'm going to first say, Jackson, do you have any previous experiences with Silent Hill?
I do. My previous experiences. Why don't you go first on this one?
Yeah. Okay. So, without even really getting the Silent Hill 2 discussion so much, I have, at time of recording, played the entirety of Silent Hill 2, and I have watched my father play a good chunk of Silent Hill 1. I didn't actually play Silent Hill 1. I played a little bit of it myself on a PSP, but like, I played Silent Hill on a PSP. What the fuck do you want from me? But I remember Silent Hill 1 being super freaky. It manages like a really good sense of tension. The tank controls play into it really, really well. Silent Hill 1 is like really, it's a really solid game for being freaky and good. Silent Hill 2, I have played the entirety of. I need to stress that fact right now, for reasons that will become clear later. I don't think maintains the same level of spookiness that Silent Hill 1 does, but it does a lot of good things in very different ways from Silent Hill 1. I don't think it's the same, like, spooky, creepy factor. Like, I never really necessarily felt spooked at any time. I mostly just kind of lived in the aesthetic and the tension of the universe. But even then, like, it wasn't even that much tension as much as it was just aesthetic, which I fucking dug. The tank controls... like going in, I knew it was going to be garbage tank controls, so I was fully prepared. I knew the puzzles are like obtuse and weird. I was fully prepared for that. So like I knew exactly what I was getting to with Silent Hill 2. And honestly, I think I really liked it. I'm still kind of working through my whole thing with it. But overall, yeah, I think I really liked it. I want to play it again, which if that says anything, like my experience with it, like that I'm like thinking about the next time I can play it again, that should say something right there.
So, for my experience with Silent Hill, I have not played any of the other games, but you know, I was a very big fan of Zero Punctuation in high school, and you know, obviously Yahtzee praises Silent Hill 2 a lot on the show. It's his favorite game, and even did a little review that made it sound very interesting. So naturally, it was something that was always on my radar, and that when I went to the cool like used game store in my hometown, I found one day for pretty cheap, which, as I understand, is unusual. So I picked it up. And I played a little bit of it, and this was right before I went off to college. And so at the time, I didn't get very far, and I put it down and said, well, I'm going to be living in the dorm with a bunch of guys, and it's not going to have the same atmosphere if, like, everyone's, like, memeing and cracking jokes and shit. I really want to take the time to savor this. And so it lay dormant for many years until it came time to do our spooky Beating a Dead Horse video game episodes when I knew we would be coming back to it. And so I did the thing I was supposed to. I got all curled up in a blanket. I sat in a dark room. It was late at night. Tried to get real into the atmosphere. And I made it approximately 2 hours before I said, fuck this. Oh my God, I hated it. I found borderline unplayable, I would say. I would go as far as to say. Spent the whole time alternately bored and frustrated. And that was my Silent Hill 2 experience. So everyone, everyone's been loading up, take aim, and when it gets time to answer questions in chat, fire your hatred at me.
So I want to jump in here and just say, like, I think this is the type of game, though, where I miss Konami when Konami could do weird fucking shit like this in MGS2, which I want to talk more about, like, why this is very Konami level weirdness when we get into spoilers. But I also think that this is the type of game that Jackson would have really liked. Like, knowing what I know about Jackson, like, he would have loved this game. Had he played this, like, earlier in his lifetime, he would have come to college and been like, this is the best fucking game in the world. And I would not have stopped hearing about it in the same way that I have not stopped hearing about MGS2. Because it does a lot of, like, the same weird ideas. And, like, uses the game space it has in bizarre and new ways. So, like, I think that there's a lot to the game that, had he been in a place where he could have tolerated the jankness that is the controls and gameplay of it, he would have appreciated it a lot more.
Maybe. I've been thinking about this a lot too, and that here's my general rule. I don't know if I've ever said this on the show, but I know we've talked about it in pre-discussion because you were warning me about some of, like, Danganronpa's logic jank when we were playing those games. And that my general rule is this: I am obviously a man with a vested interest in video game storytelling, and I'm willing to put up with some jank and some bullshit if the story is compelling enough. And this is the Jackson story jank formula. That in order for me to suffer through a game with bad gameplay, the story needs to be, like, as good as the gameplay is bad at minimum. And that's, like, the inverse story, variable here. So I've been thinking about this because, like, there is definitely, I am not one to poo-poo, like, the weird experimentalness of it. That's what made me excited to play it, was hearing about some of these things. But I'm wondering, because even, like, everyone is always, like, another example of this, of where the story was not good enough to make me suffer through the gameplay. A lot of people told me I would really like Mass Effect. I have tried playing the original Mass Effect.
Oh my God, I've tried playing Mass Effect so many times. I'm with you
Mass
on this
Effect
one, bro.
1 is so fucking boring. It's so bad. And, like, people tell me that, like, the world building is great. And that, like, the characters got some really deep characters, like, there's a lot to tear into. I don't care. I can't suffer through another second of that dumb car, or, the shitty, even by cover-based shooting standards, the horrible cover-based shooting. Like, so that's my go-to example. So I don't know. It is, I can see myself, like, willing to put up with a lot, but nowadays I'm so much more I'm the man who walked out of the fucking Lion King remake. Life's too short, man. This is the like, flag I'm planting on the hill. My bold new approach to criticism is that critics shouldn't have to waste their lives on things that they hate any more than normal people do.
So, like, just out of curiosity, I know the exact moment that broke you, but, like, what what do you think in particular was like the impetus for this? Like, what was the build up to this? Was it the controls in particular? Was it like the puzzles? Like, how? Where was the? Once again, I know where the breaking point was, but like, where was, like, what was building to this?
So it was pretty. I mean, pretty much everything. So my first problem was that I did not find it tense nor scary, which was a problem, and that I wanted it to be, if not scary, then at least tense. I felt neither of these things. Mostly I felt bored for many reasons that we can dig into. At minimum, like, the controls were bad. The camera was even worse, considering how often you are in, like, tight, like, closed spaces. I don't even know if you're in tight closed spaces this much, because full disclosure, if you know the game, I stopped in the fucking apartments, and it was just such...
decently far in the apartments. I should jump in and say that. Like, I know where he stopped. It wasn't... It's towards the ends of the apartments.
Yeah, I got farther than I did the first time I tried to play it, because I don't think I got any farther than Pyramid Head's first appearance in the first time I tried to play when I was a teenager, which is where I had that moment of realization, like, oh god, like, this was just never for me from the start, I think. Because I stopped at, like, pretty much the exact same place. And I will say, Pyramid Head, when Pyramid Head did show up, or the threat of him was looming around, it was much closer to what I wanted. I felt more tension, like, the sound design around him, like, like, when you first see Pyramid Head,
God, you never made it to Otherworld. Holy shit, dude.
I did not.
The fucking sound design in Otherworld is so good. Oh.
The sound design was the one saving grace of the game, I will say. But, like, yeah, controls, fucking terrible. The camera, the fact that, like, the locations, like, the apartments, this is especially bad in the apartments because you're just running from, like, identical room to identical room. And I get that the idea is that, like, you're in this tight claustrophobic space and, like, you're not exactly sure where you're going, so you have to, like, constantly look at the map and, like, take stock and, like, you know, have to constantly re-engage with the enemies, and that's supposed to cause some fear and tension. Like, I get what they're going for. I just don't think it works at all. I don't think it's scary. I didn't find it tense. I found dealing with the monsters rather annoying. I found, like, there was no threat for me from the monsters because they were all, like, shambling monstrosities, but, like, I ended up thinking, like, I remember I died once and being like, what? Like, what killed me? Because, like, I look at these monsters, they don't have any arms, they can barely move. There's, like, you know, the mannequins with legs, and sure, they, like, kick at you, I guess. But, like, the basic, like, you know, the Goombas, I guess, that you see sort of, like, wriggling around at the beginning. I'm like, how do these things even hurt me? They, like, kind of vaguely shake at you, and if you look closely, you can see, like, spores, I guess.
So I will actually concede to your point on that one, because, like, for a while there, I was like, are these things actually hurting me? Like, I can't really tell. And then I was like, my controller was shaking more, and, like, that, you know, representative of the heartbeat and everything. Like, I think, like, how they did the health was really clever, in terms of, like, how it reacted with the controller and everything. Like, I wish there was a little bit more of a clearer visual sign that you're taking damage from it, though, because, like, the controller dies down in terms of shaking when you're, like, actually in combat, to let you focus on the combat of it. But, like, when it actually shakes, I like that. And so, like, it wasn't, like, I actually had to pull up the menu to see if I was actually taking damage or not, and, like, where my health was at in the actual pause menu. So, like, I get where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, and I think more to the point, just, like, the fact that I didn't understand how or why these things could be hurting me, like, that makes it not scary. Like, the say what you will about Resident Evil 4, right? Like people like to dog on the Resident Evil games because they're, like, the cheap approach to, like, horror, but when you just drop a Chainsaw Man in front of me that takes 1,000,000 bullets and is in the middle of this crowd, and he can cut my fucking head off and kill me in one hit, and I know that he can do that, and I'm still, like, trying to, like, that opening village scene in Resident Evil 4, 1,000 times more intense than anything that I had, like any feeling of fear that I had with this game, which was...
I will say, I do think that, like, unlike Resident Evil, I think this is kind of a little bit more of a slow burn. I think that this one gets better in the further in you go into it. Like I think like Resident Evil kind of like drops you into the world and just says, "All right, here, you're fucking terrified." This is more of like a slow building crescendo of fear rather than like, "All right, we're getting freaky from the get go" type of thing. Which I like. I like that a lot. Like, like the more I talk about this game, the more I realize that it's completely unsurprising that I like it. Like fucking slow burn, yeah, sign me up. So like it's one of those things too where like I part of me thinks like I understand why you'd put it down, but like powering through it would have done a lot for you because I do think it gets way better the further in you go.
I don't know. When I realized I needed to stop was like I was planning on picking it up again after my initial rage moment, which I'll talk about in a minute just because I think it's funny. But when I was thinking about picking it up again, I'm just like, like I'm feeling sick, like I'm feeling terrible. Is this really what I want to do today? Like, do I really want to go back to this?
Yeah, I think that's also important. Is that we were both sick during this, so like I guess cut them some slack. Like if you don't want to do something you don't want to do when you're sick, all right?
Right. And so like, but I think I'm down with to go back to the broader point. I'm down with the slow approach to horror, but I think that this is something that the march of time has made sort of the faults clearer in hindsight. So like one is the camera, and that that's always the logic behind the fact that the camera has a mind of its own and is constantly like shifting around you is that you're out of control. You can't really see what's beyond, like you're fumbling around with the tank controls. But like,
did you figure out how to get the camera to flip behind you ever?
Yes, I did.
Okay, cool.
But it was still frustrating, like having to like wrangle with it so much. It felt more like I was like at a rodeo, like trying to steady like a bucking bronco than like experiencing horror. And like that's the thing, is that it always struck me as an extremely artificial way to try and generate that tension. And I think that's why so many of so many modern horror games are in first person, because it's having something in first person is far better. Like you see even less in your field of view, right? Because you have to like physically turn around to like see stuff behind you, and you just don't have as much going on in your peripheral vision. But you're still in complete control of the camera. So,
counterpoint. I'm gonna just cut you off real quick here.
All right, here we go.
So, one of the biggest memories I have of Silent Hill 1 is that there are like these ghost babies that run around, and you can't really do anything to them. They're just like these literal ghost toddlers that walk around and like phase in and out of walls, and they're like, they just can appear whenever, and they're fucking terrifying because like it's a tense moment, and then ha 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 ha. Wow, my voice is gone.
I mean, that was effective. That sounded like a ghost baby. So maybe.
Well, hey, there you go. Yeah. Totally intentional then. Like you'll hear it walk behind. But like when you're in third person like that, like you can see it show up behind you, and then like you have to figure out how to like whip around to try and shoot at it. Especially like it's your first time seeing it, because you're like it feels like something just jumped up behind you. So like there's a certain effectiveness, especially with the tank controls, in like trying to turn around really fast, and like that's kind of fucking freaky.
I don't know. I never feel anything but frustrated when dealing with these things. I think it's far. And so,
but you liked Resi 4.
Yes, because although Resi 4 wasn't perfect in terms of its controls, it was far more modern. Like there was a reason that it was considered a huge step up from the other Resi games. Like by the standards of like typical third-person action shooter, it's got janky controls, but it's not really the same thing, particularly with like the pointing and shooting. So I find it like if you're doing the slow burn, I think the fact that you can't see the thing that's behind you, I find that a lot scarier. Like I played a little bit, so talking similar, I spent a similar amount of time with Amnesia, and was far more freaked out playing that, even though I never encountered like a single baddie, just because of like, all right, like I'm in first person, I have to like look down to like, manipulate these books on this shelf and like, keep turning around and looking behind me at the corner to see if anything that wasn't there is there a minute ago. So I think even in terms of like the slow burn to horror, I never felt that with this game. I just felt like, what's around the corner? Oh, some more stupid mushroom spore people. Good. Great. Can't wait to just run past them and go into another savvy looking fucking apartment. So I don't know. I think that this is a time marches on sort of thing. I think we know how to do horror games better now, and it's really hard to go back if you didn't have much experience with this sort of game back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I really, honest to God, think this just boils down to, I don't think we can understate the fact that you were feeling shitty did not help. But B, I think this is really a lot of like personal preference in a lot of ways. Because as I said, I still really liked it. I didn't really play Silent Hill. I watched my dad play it, so like I didn't know what to expect as much. Like I knew what to expect, but I didn't know how to expect it. If that makes sense. I don't know. I like I said, I still really fucking liked it. So it might just be like no accounting for taste type of thing.
Can I tell the good people the exact moment that made me quit, because I think it's kind of humorous?
Drop it on us if you know what I'm saying.
Ooh, very nice. So in the apartments, I had gotten into the second room of the apartments. I got past Pyramid Head's first appearance. I saw him with the, fucking the dolls, and I get into the second apartment. I'm like running around, and I come into this room with a chest that has like a riddle and some slots to put some coins in. I'm like, okay, cool, let's look for these coins. And I run around the apartment complex, go everywhere that I possibly can, like really meticulously, don't find a single one. I'm like, well, shit. What's going on here? And so finally I go back to the room, I do another sweep. I'm like, oh, do I really have to go back into the other apartment complex? Did I miss them? Like, this is going to be a pain in the ass nightmare. I don't want to do this. Let's just look it up. And so I got only as far as where the first coin is, or where one of the coins are, which was, earlier you see a very conspicuous piece of garbage in a garbage chute. And the whole time, like, I'd been frustrated. I kept going back every time I got a new item because I'm like, oh, there's something jammed in there. I have a giant 2x4. Like, why can't I just, like, stick it in there and, like, poke it and, like, dislodge it? Can I, like, that doesn't work? Okay, I have a gun. Can I shoot it? Will that make the bag rip? Like every time I got a new item, I would go back to it. And then when I discovered that the actual solution was when you picked up like a giant crate of Juicy Juice, and you had to take the crate of Juicy Juice and drop it down the chute to make the garbage fall outside, and then you could go pick up just one of the 3 fucking coins. I was like, I'm out. I can't do this. I can't spend another second on this. Which obviously, like, annoying puzzle. I could have just, gone and gotten past it with a fucking guide. I could have just used a guide for all the dumb puzzles. But the fact that from moment to moment I was feeling nothing but boredom and misery, it was just like that was the straw that broke the camel's back for me.
And you know what? It is what it is. We can't change that now. But you know what we can do? We can talk about spoilers.
Ooh, here we go. Sean gets to have all the interesting things to say this week.
I was gonna say this is gonna be a Sean episode, which is unfortunate because I am the one who is worse off health-wise.
Very unfortunate.
That said, though, as we said, next week we are gonna be talking about Joker. So if you want to listen to us talk about that movie, you can. We're going to be a part of that hashtag discourse. Oh, God, please help us. Why?
We're always here for the hashtag discourse.
So we'll be doing that next week.
Run from it. It will arrive all the same.
Just like Pyramid Head. And hey, speaking of Pyramid Head, let's talk spoilers. So this is kind of a weird one, because as we said, Jackson played the first 2 hours of it and then stopped. So like I think I'm gonna try and give a little bit of a plot synopsis. I'm probably gonna butcher it quite a bit, just because like I'm still kind of trying to run through it in my head. But I'm gonna whip up a guide really quick just so I can kind of make sure I get this all in the order I need to. So, you've seen up to the apartments where, you arrive. James Sunderland is looking for his wife who's been dead for 3 years. Did you ever run into Eddie?
I did not run into Eddie, no.
Okay. In the apartments, there's a dude throwing up in a toilet. His name is Eddie Dombrowski. He is in a room that has a corpse in the fridge. And he's like throwing up like all nervous and panicky and stuff. And you like learn that, he, like you and Angela, who you did run into Angela.
Yes.
Were drawn to Silent Hill for one reason or another. And it's, kind of not really clear why any of you were drawn there until, the game goes on. You make it through the apartments. You run into Laura somewhere along the way. Laura is this little girl that basically just antagonizes you the entire time.
Yeah, I ran into her. She kicked the keys away and caused a problem.
Yes, that's Laura. And then she does that the entire time. She basically antagonizes Eddie for a little bit, calling him a fat pig, which is a running motif through this, because Eddie's a fat pig, and that plays into a lot of things. And then you also run into Maria. And before we go any further with that, I do have to say Shadow the Hedgehog absolutely fucking ruined me. Because every time I saw Maria, I just went, Maria, where's that damn fourth Chaos Emerald? And it was bad. But no.
Wait, can I just say about the name Maria is that one time I had I Tinder matched with a girl named Maria and asked if it was like Shadow the Hedgehog and immediately got unmatched.
Oh, God. Ill-advised matches for 200, please, Alex. So yeah, you meet Maria, and she is like your dead wife Mary in every way except not. She's a little bit more sexual, if you would. You go hang out in a bowling alley. She weirdly says that she doesn't want to go in because she doesn't like bowling. I don't. I don't really know why. I think, like, obviously it's to, like, continue the story and everything like that. But, like, that moment just stands up in my mind as, like, weird and kind of goofy. But, like, that's how this game is in a lot of ways. There's a lot of, like, the voice acting is all kind of strangely jank. But, like, it's all, like, once again, I really fucking like it. It's just all, like, you have to deal with, like, the 2002 PS2 era voice acting. Anyway, from there, you go hang out in a hospital, which is where you first get the other world, which the other world, oh my God, the sound design is so good. It's just like metal clanking and gears and just so mechanical. It's so good. Holy shit. I love it so much. It's also the first time you hear the sirens in this game, the one thing I will say is I was disappointed that there weren't more sirens. I like the sirens a lot. But no, from there, you go to the Maria's with you the entire time until she decides she needs to take a nap. She's sick, kind of like an allusion to your wife. They follow you down to the basement, and once you get into the other world, or you go to the basement once you're in the other world. She ends up down there somehow. Like, it's never fully explained, but I mean, that just kind of goes into Maria. And then she follows you around again. You get down further into the basement, and Pyramid Head chases you through the basement before eventually killing Maria while you're getting into the elevator. And it's like actually a really tense scene, like the way the corridors are, and like the camera works for it in a lot of ways. But then from there, you leave there, you go do some running around, you dive into a bunch of holes, kind of like, for me, it was kind of like diving into the recesses of your mind, an allegory for that. I don't know whether that's actually what it was, and like that's what we're going to talk about when we get done here, because this game is very ambiguous with its themes, and I like that. From there, you go through like a prison, some other stuff, and then you run into Eddie again, who is at this point basically confesses to you that he killed a dog, and then crippled his high school bully by shooting him in the kneecaps, and has basically gone totally batshit since in Silent Hill, and just like, yeah, fuck it. All these people here, they all make fun of me, but I don't care. I can kill them. I've got the gun. It's what I can do. So like you have to put him down, and it's not an intense fight because you just sit there with a shotgun and shoot him a lot. But like it is kind of, it's freaky because it's the first human you're killing, and you're killing him in this meat locker that comes out of nowhere. And then from there you head across the street to the hotel, and the hotel is where things get real weird because your dead wife is supposedly in there. It turns out, of course, she's not. She's dead, and that's also when you learn that you actually killed your wife, which was a twist that I did not see coming and really fucking liked. Like, it recontextualizes literally everything else in the game, and it's really clever. From there, you run into Angela again. I think you actually run into her somewhere in the caverns as well, where you learn that she basically is dealing with family trauma, including, like, sexual assault by her father and her mother blaming her for it, which is real dark and, like, obviously. You run into her again there. She's still like trying not to commit suicide, and you see that in her eyes, Silent Hill is always on fire, like always encouraging her to kill herself. Which is also just fascinating. We're gonna talk about that too. And then from there, you do a little bit of extra stuff. You go around. You go find out that Maria's still alive and is also evil. You kill Maria, and then you get your ending. I guarantee I skipped some stuff there. I am sorry if I did. We'll come back to it in a minute when I'm talking about it, I'm sure. But like that's the quick recap I can give while I still can't talk very well. So, take from that what you will.
So do we want to talk about the endings mechanic? Do you want to mention that first, or should we save that?
Let's talk about the endings first. Because this is a game with multiple endings. And I mentioned the PS2 era Konami weirdness. Because like MGS2 does a bunch of like weird subversions and stuff that are really clever for that game. This game does it as well, in that the multiple endings aren't really based on like, did you go here and do this at the right time? They're way more about like how you handled the game. Like, did you look at the wife's letter that she sent you in your inventory? How many times did you do that? Did you keep yourself at low health? Like various things that you wouldn't really think about while you play, but basically influences like what the game is perceiving as James's mindset. So like I played with a very survivalist instinct to it, which we'll talk about how that kind of conflates with doesn't jive with my ending in a second, but that meant that I spent a lot of time at low health, which the game took to read as James is suicidal. And it ends with James driving into Lake Silent Hill, or whatever the hell the lake's called, which is just, it's fascinating. I love that of the three endings, it's all based on like very small details that like any playthrough could change, even if you're not intending to. I think that's really fucking sick. And it's really clever.
Definitely, and I will say this as someone who is wary of multiple endings in video games, and I have some questions. I can't make any definitive statements because I did not finish the game, obviously, but I have some questions based on what you've been telling me about how this sort of ends up playing out. But it is a far cry from the usual hackneyed thing of do you hit the red button or the green button at the very end of the game and get some shitty fucking ending, or even like even in something like BioShock, right, where like that is a bit more like, yeah, it's one central moral choice, but it's what you do like throughout the game. At least even that ends with, are you like the good savior boy, or are you like Hitler 2.0? So like I'm usually pretty wary of multiple endings of video games. So I appreciate that this one's at least classy and experimental about it.
Yeah, no, and like they all I feel like they would all work just because of what it is. So I don't know. What are your questions? Let's answer that.
So my questions really have mostly to do, like, if we're making MGS2 comparisons, obviously one of MGS2's main concerns, I mean, I say obviously, but it's not really that obvious, especially if I played MGS2, is like this sort of postmodern like detachment of player and avatar. And so do you see anything like that in this game? Because my first thought when you told me that you had gotten the suicide ending, and I'm gonna come back to a Zero Punctuation quote that has stuck with me for a very long time, because I think it very much illustrates a lot of the, I won't say the problem of like integrating gameplay and narrative, but the challenge of it is that like he was actually talking about one of the Silent Hill games. I believe it was the one for the Wii that's
Downpour, I think, or Revelations.
Yeah, was something like that. And where he had mentioned that like that one actually makes you take like a Myers-Briggs test at the beginning, but also somewhat like evaluates you based on your actions. And he says, well, there is a difference between how I act in a video game and how I act in real life. If in real life, if I enter the women's restroom, it's to sniff the toilet seats for some illicit sexual thrill. But in a video game, if I enter the women's restroom, it's to check underneath, for health packs and other goodies and, thoroughly exploring the place. So I think that's, a pretty funny, like pretty glib way of putting kind of the problem of character and protagonist separation. And this is something that I'm maybe seeing here, at least with this particular ending, because like when I think of, playing with low health, like you had even mentioned when you were describing how it went to me that you had played with the intention of kind of conserving supplies, being very cautious, like, holding on to as many health kits as you could. And that the game interpreted that to mean that like you're living on the edge, that the character is suicidal, but like, you could also interpret that same feeling the other way of just like, not thinking about the next 5 seconds, just like, plowing through all your ammo and your health and like really like recklessly charging forward. You could interpret it that way as well. So I'm like, I guess that's one of my big questions is how do you see this, if at all, this question of like James and the player, like what kind of boundaries do you think the game sort of sees or sets, if any?
I don't think it really matters, because I don't think that like it's one of those things where like I only realized that it's a suicide ending like based on how I played because I went and looked up like what the criteria for it were. Like I think playing through this on the first time, it's just more of an interesting idea to find and discover it, if that makes sense. Like I think that there's an element of just like kind of learning how the game reads. Like I don't necessarily like I realized that like I was playing it one way, but like that it makes sense why the game would take it in that interpretation of it, and I don't begrudge it that. Like I think there's only so many interpretations that can be made of it. I think the fact that it even tries to do that is admirable. I can't remember the word admirable now. That's wonderful. So like I think that like even if it didn't necessarily jive with how I played it, I have to just like I fucking respect it. I like that like it has the balls to be like, nah, fam, you got the suicide ending because you played it fast and loose with your health, and like I think that's really fucking interesting.
Okay, cool. Well, because that was basically my next question was, and I think that's a good point that your like average player isn't going to be aware of like the mechanics of each ending, like especially on a blind playthrough. But because my next question was, did you find the ending like coherent and interesting and satisfying? Because that's usually my problem with multiple endings is that the story, either there's one ending that is just like so much more obviously like clear and like fitting for the game that came before it, and like everything else just feels kind of like a tacked on bonus. So but it sounds like you felt like the ending that you got made sense for the story and like the way things played out and didn't feel like a jarring like, wait, what? Like why did this happen?
Yeah, so like the three endings that you can get on your first playthrough, for what it's worth, are In Water, Leave, and Maria, I believe. And like they all fit really well with how you played the game, because Leave basically means that you came in, saw your wife was dead, kind of came to terms with it, and then just walked away from it. It's like the easiest one to get. Like I'm looking at the IGN wiki for this, so like I'm talking kind of out my ass, but also I'm looking at things on it. So like it is supposed to be the easiest one to get, and I think it makes sense as to why, and like also would be the answer for the easiest one. In Water is the one that's a little bit trickier to get, and like reading the requirements makes sense once again as to like why it would happen that way and why it would feel satisfying, because at that point you feel so much guilt and like love for your wife at the same time, that you're like, listen, this is how it has to end. This is what needs to happen here. And like, it makes sense as an ending. And the last one is Maria, which is where you go to the space colony Ark and clone yourself and make Shadow the Hedgehog. No, sorry, I can't leave it alone. All right.
There is a UFO ending.
There is a UFO ending. But no, Maria is basically where you do all in your power to keep her alive and like make her as happy as you possibly can. And so like you leave with Maria. Like, it shows that you put your allegiance in Maria. So like all three endings do make sense based on how you played the game in a very natural way. All right, and then you get like the dog ending and stuff, which that's a whole other thing.
Those are all New Game Plus things.
Yeah, and
which is smart.
But I mean, like, the dog ending too does kind of like, I did actually a bunch of reading about this before we went into it, because I'm like, I enjoyed it, but like I want to try and set myself in the mindset of 15 years ago, like as people who are first playing this. And like they raised up a good point that like the dog ending kind of makes sense too, because it's all just a bunch of fucking terrible things happening to James, and like if it's a dog, it basically just means none of it matters. This is just torture. Fuck you, James. And like there's something poetically dark about that too. It's more than just a meme.
All right, I can get behind that. I'm down with some black comedy nihilism.
So I mean that's kind of the take on the endings. Do you have anything else you want to talk about with the endings? Like any other questions? Since anything else you want to talk about isn't really a question now, is it?
No. I mean, I think what you're saying about the endings has left me satisfied and willing to give the game. Like I said, I'm not sitting here trying to say that the game is a complete fucking disaster. I don't know how it ever got popular or how people enjoy it. But I look at it in very much the same way that I look at Shenmue, if that helps contextualize anything.
You know where any seamen are?
Do you know any sailors around here?
I think they hang out by the docks.
Oh my god, fucking Shenmue. All right.
All right. So then the other thing we could talk about, and like once again, it's just gonna be bouncing off of you, is like the interpretations of Silent Hill as like a metaphor, because it's all clearly metaphorical or not, depending on how you want to look at it. But it's all like in favor of a bigger theme. So like kind of going through this game, I was kind of looking at this as Silent Hill is a manifestation of trauma. And that kind of plays into the idea of Eddie and Angela, who are both seeing from what you can, you don't actually have definitive proof that this is what's happening. Angela kind of refers to it, but you get the idea that Eddie is seeing Silent Hill very differently from the other world that you are seeing it as is Angela, because Angela is seeing Silent Hill constantly in flames, and she even makes a point about that, because like at one point you see the world start to light up in flames, and you're like, is it on fire in here, or is it just me? And she's like, nah, this is life for me. This is what Silent Hill is. It is all on fire. And Eddie makes a crack about how like, yeah, man, these monsters, they go down in one hit. Who cares? You just shoot them and they're dead. Who gives a fuck? And you're like, wait, that's not my experience at all either. So it is kind of an interesting idea that like Silent Hill is the representation of everyone's traumas, and basically you go there to either reconcile or be consumed by them. And like you can kind of see the spectrum across all three characters, where Eddie is fully consumed, just goes on full on murderous rampage. And then Angela is the kind of middle ground, where she's not really sure what she's doing. Like she's, threatening to kill herself, but she never explicitly does. There's an implication that she's leaving to go do so, but it's not perfectly clear whether she does or not. And then there's you, who, depending on your ending, basically accepts, yeah, I fucked up. I killed my wife. This is, who I am. This is my trauma now. How do I live with this, and how do I deal with it? Which is an absolutely fascinating like study of the mind and how we handle trauma, especially because Angela, like at one point you have to kill an enemy called an abstract daddy, which I I had the misfortune of seeing while I was doing research on Silent Hill for a different project, laughing at it, posting it in a Discord going, haha, look at this. It's called an abstract daddy. Isn't that funny? And then I believe friend of the podcast, Desi's like, hey, Sean, did you read what an abstract daddy is? And I'm like, no. And then I looked at it and I'm like, oh, it's a physical representation of her father sexually assaulting her. Whoops.
Big oof. Okay, can we get a slide whistle in here, ladies and gentlemen?
So yeah, that was one where I'm just like, made a big fucky wucky on that one. That's why you read things before you post things. But yeah, it's really fucking dark. And like it's a very interesting look at how people process trauma. Is one interpretation. Another interpretation that the entire fucking thing is in James's mind, and like literally even Eddie and Angela are further extensions of his psyche, and like Eddie is, his anger at wasting his life, 3 years of his life with oh my god, Mary, before he finally killed her in both passion and anger, and then Angela is guilt and wanting to die and be punished for his actions, and then you've got Laura, who's just a constant antagonist of him, and Maria, who's the sexual repressed urges that he has, like wanting his wife to be who she once was and not doped up on medicine and dying in bed. It's all very interesting.
See, and this is what makes me sad, because this is the stuff that all sounds great, and this is the stuff that made me want to play the game. Particularly with like the way the other characters see it, and if they're even there. And I think that's one of the things that I found so frustrating, is that like I was ready for some nice, like, I love me a like really strong setting in a game, full of like visual symbolism and relating to character and all that stuff. Like my biggest complaint, the biggest wasted opportunity of something like Persona 4 is that that's a game where all the levels take place basically like in the minds of the characters, and yet they're all just fucking corridors. Biggest missed opportunity in the world.
Which is why Persona 5 does it way better.
Even Persona 5, like I think that it could be a lot more specific, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. And so that's also why I found myself getting frustrated, and that like in my defense, it's usually good practice, and I could be totally wrong. Typically, because game development is such a chaotic thing, that usually they will put like kind of the vertical slice, like the thing that's, I mean, it's like any other art form, really. You put a lot of the interesting stuff at the beginning to try and like hook people's interest in. And so I was really looking forward to like exploring the setting, like getting a lot of this visual symbolism, and found myself so frustrated that I was just running around these shitty, boring apartments for a couple hours. And like that was one of the things that was really frustrating for me. I'm like, yeah, okay, like maybe there's some stuff going on, like sure, like Pyramid Head, like fucking the leg torso things, like yeah, that's really relevant. But otherwise, like it just felt like generic, grungy, blown out post-apocalyptic apartments, and I'm like, this is the start of the game. This is what they're trying to get me like hooked on. I'm like, what are you doing here, Silent Hill? Like, oh no.
I will say, just as a quick aside, and kind of diving back into theme and whatnot, I actually, when you mentioned Pyramid Head fucking the leg, the mannequins as they're called, and when I saw that, I had assumed that was Pyramid Head trying to shove one of them into a garbage disposal, which was dark in its own right. But like in that context, it takes on a whole new meaning, because like the interpretation of Pyramid Head has been kind of long up for debate, and like there's not any clear answers as to like what Pyramid Head is, other than a slow executioner coming for you. And like there's some interpretations that it's basically like James's own ideologies trying to punish him for what he has done. And like the idea of Pyramid Head, fucking one of the mannequins, who are basically, they are a torso with sexy mannequin legs. Don't fucking quote me on saying that ever, for the love of God. Please, that sounds so weird out of context.
Too late. 12 people have already clipped it.
I was gonna, yeah, that's gone. But like, you know, they're literally mannequin legs for both arms and legs, and like they're kind of like gross embodiments of sex in a lot of ways. And so like his own like ideals angry at him fucking his own, you know, repressed sexuality is a lot to unpack, to put it lightly.
It is a lot to unpack, and that's why like I responded like best to all the stuff going on with Pyramid Head, because then whenever I ran into him, and the few times that I did, it was like, okay, here we go. Like here's kind of what I'm looking for, like some nice like symbolism to dig into, and beyond that, just like knowing that Pyramid Head was around, like I really like the fact that the first time you see him again is not that scene of him fucking the legs, but of him just like standing in a spot where he can't get to you, but you have to go in through a door towards him. And like that was the most effective like creepy moment to me in the time that I had played, because like I knew that I had to actively make the choice to go forward where he would be, you know, presumably running around and, you know, trying to gut me with his giant buster sword.
Oh, wait, that's the correct interpretation. Pyramid Head is just Cloud.
Pyramid Head is Cloud Strife. He's like, it's like Kingdom Hearts, the Heartless. He's the part of Cloud Strife that got split off after he had his crazy like mind drug adventure. Like he's the Heartless of Cloud Strife.
Exactly, there it is. He's the Heartless of Cloud Strife. Done. Problem solved.
But yeah, and so like that's so I guess like another question is like, it in that regard, like with the other world and stuff, did the locales like get more interesting and get more like engaging in terms of visual storytelling like after the apartments? Was it really just a case where like someone was dumb and put the worst part at the beginning, or
so like I kind of want to talk about some of your complaints as they were before, because like I need to dive into that before I can answer yes or no. Because you mentioned that like you felt like all of the rooms felt very samey, and like they were, you go, you know, room by room checking off can access, can't access, can access, can't access, and I love that shit. Like maps and me in video games are just click, like going room to room, just going like yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Like I had full candidness. I had a guide up. I didn't use it most of the time. Like I had the guide up mostly because I'm like, I have a time crunch that I need to get through this, but I want to play this game as blind as I can. So like whenever I accessed a new area, the first thing I did was go through and solve as much of it as I could by myself. And I loved walking into like the hospital or the hotel or whatever, and then just checking every door. There was something about that was so fucking satisfying.
See, I liked the way the map was done as well. I liked how James like automatically made little notes. I particularly liked this like when I was just in the streets, like going through and finding which ways I could go. I thought I would be really into it. But like for me, it was just the fact that the apartments, by nature of them being apartments and are like by design meant to be incredibly uniform, and the fact that I just was not, again, because I get what they're going for, that like you're going through, there's all these doors and trying to figure out which ones you can and cannot go into, where all these like shambling monstrosities are like coming after you. You know, you only have so much time. I didn't feel any of that tension, so it was just boring to me. But I do like the map mechanic in theory, in place of a different locale, perhaps.
Well, see, what I was gonna say, following up on that, is like I felt like the rooms, like it's not. I'm gonna compare it to Fallout, like Fallout 3 for New Vegas, where in those games you can basically access every room ever, and like it suffers for that because those literally are all the exact same room. Whereas in this, they're like, all right, here's a hall, or like here's an apartment building with 30 different rooms. You can access 7 of them. Go figure out what those are. And I feel like each of those 7 rooms at least had something in them that differentiated them from another room. Like, they might have the same kind of aesthetic or feel to it, but, like, I could identify what room was which.
I mean, I could to a degree, I guess, but it wasn't a meaningful enough distinction to make the rooms worth exploring to me, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, also, by explore, you mean walk in, check the doors, walk out. Like, exploring isn't the right word. That's a little strong.
Right, but I would have liked some exploring.
I guess. I don't know. I mean, like, I think to answer your question, then yes and no. They get a little bit more visually interesting, but it is a lot more of the same of like walk in, check a room, walk out, walk in, check a room, walk out. Like the hospital, like there's hallways where you just check patients' rooms. And like sure, there's like other lobbies and stuff, and like patient like operating rooms, theaters, etc. But like for the most part, it is still like check room S13. Doors locked, S14 can go in there, and like those rooms are also relatively small, but then like you get like Otherworld, and then like there's the prison, and like I think it definitely gets more visually interesting in that regard, but like the core mechanic of it doesn't change.
Because I noticed a pattern in all the locations that you mentioned that you go to: hospital, prison, hotel, all very much designed like apartment buildings to be extremely uniform, and have a lot of.
Yeah, I was thinking that as I was saying it, actually, yeah. Although I will say the prison isn't as uniform as you would think it is. You can't actually go. There's like only two cells you can go in.
Yes. I mean, I would expect you to be able to get a little weirder with the prison, if only because like most people like you can kind of fudge what the inside of a prison would be, especially since prisons have taken different shapes, whereas like everyone's been in a hospital and a hotel and an apartment complex. So yeah. Well, I mean I at least feel vindicated in that if that set the tone, that continuing on would have been like my own like psychological torture visit to Silent Hill.
Maybe, but once again, like I think for me, if nothing else, like it's only an 8-hour game. It's really not that much of a time commitment.
I mean, you say that, but have you ever seen how many people? Or sorry, maybe I'm extremely hyper self-aware now. I watched a video where somebody calculated the amount of free time you have as a human being before you die at like maximum. I cannot look at like the length of media ever again.
Fair enough, but I do think like if you do end up at one point where you're like, hey, I have some time to kill, like actually try and power through it. Like I genuinely think that you would probably appreciate this game more than you think you would. Like I think that there's enough to it that is interesting and does a lot of like the plot itself is compelling enough to keep you moving forward.
I mean, it does sound like it. It's just that ratio. That's a pretty hard and fast rule for me.
I think the big thing is like I do see the beginning as a little bit more boring, and I think that's because until you meet Eddie, you talk to Angela and then you talk to no one for like 2 hours.
Yes, which I was not happy with.
And then like as soon as you're done with that, people start talking to you a lot more, and like it picks up pace a lot more. So take from that what you will.
Alrighty. Well, is it time to look at chat? Do we? I haven't looked at it. Do we have people coming at me?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm gonna sit back and let chat rip you a new one.
All right, here we go.
Boy, howdy. Drinking some water. Probably gonna pop a cough drop here and just enjoy the shit show. Because yes, please, chat. It's openly Q&A. Go, Bug Jackson.
All right, so I'm seeing. I'm quickly scanning real quick. First things first, I'd really like to know how much time Jackson gave himself to play the game. Given what I know from the DRV3 podcast, he tends to hold these things off and may miss out on some of the atmosphere. I mean, firstly, I usually give myself like a solid week. We've just done like a lot of long fucking games. I actually gave myself more time to do this one, even though it was shorter. Like, I very easily could have finished this one. I just absolutely did not want to. Glitch here says, if I recall correctly, Silent Hill's bad controls are part of the game, because aren't you supposed to be scared and panicking and trying to aim, and it isn't easy? Yes, I don't find it scary though. I find it just frustrating and bad. So, I mean, what are you gonna do? All right, okay. So Glitch says mostly some other things. I see like it is supposed to be psychological, but I feel like that's not a defense. I feel like that's just saying that doesn't necessarily mean that it's executing on it very well. Like, yeah, it's supposed to be psychological, but if you're just seeing a bunch of twisted Goombas shaking and it looks stupid, then I'm not like feeling any sort of psychological tension, especially since there's no like real story at the beginning, at least. I don't know. I feel like it opens very much on the wrong foot.
Honestly, the more I think about it, the more I do agree that I think the beginning is a little rough. Like the apartments, it definitely bogs down.
Here we have the two different reaction. So Glitch out here supporting the homies, saying, "Hey Jackson, you're a good person and a good friend," smiley face. Desi saying, "Hey Jackson, you're a bad person and a bad friend," frowny face. So I mean, what are you gonna do? And so Don Juan asking, "Well, now I have to know, how much free time does someone have in their lifetime?" Shit, I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head. But it was a vlog that I had watched by some fucking crazy man. Who like he even accounted for like how much time you would spend pooping throughout your lifetime in this. And obviously it was a very rough estimate. But like it was only something like 100K hours, which does not sound like a lot to me over the course of like an 80-year life, especially because like big chunks of that were taken out for work and sleep. I would link the video, but honestly, it's fucking terrifying. I don't want anyone else to watch it. It legit fucked me up pretty hard.
Also, I did see Desi posting for a little bit more positivity. I'm hoping that we did deliver on positivity on the back half there, because I did genuinely really like this game.
No, and you brought up a lot of its finer points, which obviously I can't disagree with because I haven't been there. But that's what's frustrating to me, is that it's not like this is just some like game that I played and thought was bad. It's that I know that it has all these elements that I just don't think I can disentangle from, because it's not like watching a movie. Like I'm a lot more I drop a lot more games, I drop a lot more books, like simply just because of the time investment. Like, it takes a lot for me to walk out of a movie. It takes the fucking Lion King remake.
I mean, just as a quick aside, I do think that this is kind of the more we've been doing this, the more interesting I think it is, because I think like you and I, we're really good for each other in this podcast, which I know is kind of a goofy sentence. We've been doing this for 2 years at this point, but also like just as like you and I come at movies in very different ways, but a lot of times end up on like the same side on like our opinions of them.
Right.
With video games, it's a little bit different because like we both recognize, like with the exception of like Danganronpa, a lot of times it's like I recognize why you like this game so much. I did not, because yes. I'm thinking of this and I'm thinking of Nier Automata, which were both games where I'm like, I fucking love this. Nier is literally one of my all-time favorite games, and you're like, I get it, but no.
No, yeah, and I think there's something to be said. And so, firstly, I think this is a good thing, because Desi just posted, kind of chimed in. Jackson, is it possible that you don't like survival horror games, not action horror like Resi 4 and forwards? They're very puzzle and kind of clunky combat heavy, which is sort of strange, because normally I, like, clunky combat is always, like, to me, but, like, puzzle games, like, I'm a big Zelda boy. I like some exploration. I like things like that. So, I mean, I guess like Jury's still out. There's some more recent kind of like non-actiony horror games, like, I'm kind of in the vein of Amnesia that I've enjoyed. So I don't know. We'll just have. I don't think I have a good answer there. But like, yeah, when it comes to games, I have a very I have a very low tolerance for I don't even know, like I think one of the things, I'd say I have a very low tolerance for repetition, but that's not exactly true because I'm fine with JRPGs, which is weird. But generally speaking, I have a pretty low tolerance for repetition. I have a pretty low tolerance for like feeling like I'm going into the same room and doing the same thing, which was my problem with Nier, was that I enjoyed Nier right up until the point where I had to do it all again, pretty much exactly the same way, but with a dumb twin-stick shooter minigame. And yeah, so I don't know, like with this, I think that's another, like, the key thing that was holding me back is not so much at the core, the clunkiness, because I've definitely played some clunkers. Like I've enjoyed quite a few like NES games. I think it's that repetition, going down, checking the door, checking every like inch, checking the other door, finding it doesn't work, running past this thing, checking this door. Oh, couldn't stand it. And much like how in Nier, what I didn't like about Nier was not like the broad stroke story, which I thought was good, but like going from fight to fight, like basically like when it gets to the point, well, here I want to address some of this being said in chat. And Desi, that's fair. It says it just seems like with the RE4 comparison that you're faulting it not for what it is, but what it is not. That's a fair criticism of what I said. It's not the best source of comparison. I don't have a ton of experience with horror games, so it was one of the only ones that I could instantly jump to. Like, my experience with Amnesia probably was the better comparison, and that I enjoyed that game a lot more, and it was much closer to what Silent Hill was trying to be, I think. Now I forgot where I was going with this. But oh no, I know. So like I find it extra frustrating when there's like a good story that I feel like is being gated off by a lot of like bad combat. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know, it's funny like how we come at this with a very different way. Like I think the big thing is like we both recognize a good story when we see one, but like we like very different styles of games. Like I like the Platinum style of hack and slash beat 'em up, but like I get bogged down in the repetition of JRPGs, whereas then you're like, hell yeah, let me fight the same mole 300 times, and I'm like, God, no, stop. Let me just press 3 buttons and beat the shit out of things.
Well, it's actually thinking about it now. Here's what it is about JRPGs. In that like when I play a JRPG, either one of two things happen. It's either like Pokemon, where I can just nuke the thing instantly, and then I'll get a little number that goes up and gives me a like monkey Skinner box moment, or like it'll actually be a difficult fight that inherently like I have to think about and like actually sort of like plan out my moves. Whereas what I find bogs me down at a lot of action games is that there will very rarely be like enemies that you can just sort of nuke and get that like satisfying thing. Like even the smaller minions you gotta kind of like hack at for a bit. And then the bigger guys, like, you know, you have your big old boss fights that require more thought and finesse. But then like you'll have your bigger mooks that just kind of eat more hits. And it just, you know, the flow doesn't sit right with me.
See,
you know, what
numbers
can I say?
Numbers don't do shit for me. Like I've played a bunch of Destiny and stuff like that, and like I watched the I played Borderlands too, and like I see the numbers go up, and like it's more about the impact than the numbers for me. Like because that's the closest thing I can come to with a JRPG and this stuff is like the repetition of numbers in like looter shooters like that, where you know it's just all about getting that number up. I don't care. I want the guns to feel good. I want the sword to hit satisfyingly. Numbers don't make me happy.
No, and numbers don't make me happy either. I don't like looter shooters at all. In fact, I think they're the worst kind of shooters. And so I think to elaborate on this more, it's less the number and more like the idea that there is something around the corner that like I am going to, with this next number, I am going to get a cool new move or a new option. Whereas with like a looter shooter, I know what I'm going to get. It's going to be another fucking gun.
Fair. I don't know. New options for me are just still like ways of making your numbers a little bit bigger. So, I mean, there we go. We finally figured out why one of us likes JRPGs and why the other one does it. Like, we finally did it. It took us years, but I think we finally, like, through trial and error, finally parsed this fucking thing out. Also, Desi, I saw you post this a little bit ago. I 100% want to play Silent Hill 3. I'm very curious to see if they refine some of it. as I was doing my research on Silent Hill 2, people were like, hey, it's got a bad reputation, but it's still actually really good, and you should go seek it out. So 100% I'm going to play Silent Hill 3 at some point. It sounds like, I mean, I like Silent Hill as a series. There's a nostalgia in 1 for me. 2 I think is really interesting, and I'm excited to see what 3. So hey, it took years in a Silent Hill episode for some fucking reason. All right. Well, do we have any final questions that we want to get in here?
Let's end on that nice positive note.
Let in here. All right. Yeah, we'll wrap up here then. So thank you all for hanging with us. Thank you all for dealing with our various voice issues and coughs. I did my best to mute myself whenever I coughed, so like you guys missed out on some real good chunky ones. I'm regretting saying that already. But you know what? Thanks for dealing with it and sticking out with us and, you know, hanging out with us through this whole recording. I've been Sean McKinda. You can find me on Twitter at Sean_McKinda. You can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/helpus_Skippy. My writing over at 25yearslatersite.com. My final article on Preacher is going out yesterday if you're listening to the recording, tomorrow if you're listening to it live. Preacher's over and it ended good, so like I'm happy on that front. Hooray.
And I'm Jackson Keller. You can find me over on twitch.tv/JacksonJKeller. Play Smash. That's about all I do these days. So go play Smash with me.
If you want to follow the podcast, you can do so at BADH_cast on Twitter. I'm trying to tweet more from there, like actually making a concerted effort to do so now. I did not last week because we didn't actually release our Ad Astra episode. So here's our apology for that too. We were going to, and then about halfway through we went, oh shit, this is real fucking real. Let's not, because it got into some heavy shit that we're just not ready to make public in any way, shape, or form. So sorry about that. But hey, quick review, Ad Astra, good. Go watch it.
Quick review, decent. Go watch it.
There you go. If you want to get in contact with us in a more direct place, you can join our Discord. That is by becoming a patron over at patreon.com/BADHcast. For only $1 a month, that's like fucking nothing. That's pocket change. You got that in dimes right now, I guarantee it. You can get access to our Discord. We'll post about things that are coming up, things that are happening, and you can yell at us more directly, like if you're still fucking pissed at Jackson for giving up after 2 hours. Or if you want to get a little bit more cool, you can give us $5 a month and get access to shut up,
a cool $5.
You can get access to our bonus episodes, which we're gonna have a Persona 3 what are they anime
film anthology,
anthology. That's not going to be released at the like that normally coming out around this time, but it's going to be delayed a little bit just because we were all busy and sick recently, so expect that sometime closer to the middle of the month, but we'll get it out there. And then at $10 a month, you get access to not only everything above, but you can make specific requests for bonus episodes. We're going to be getting back into those fairly shortly here, but we want to do a little bit of outside of that stuff first. You also get something.
You get a special shout out at the end of every episode. Thank you so much, Julia, Travis, Mom, Aunt Summer. Thank y'all. Y'all are great. Keeping the lights on, supporting the homies here in 2019.
And also, thanks to Lords of the Highway for the use of our theme song. It is Suicide, alternate take off the album High Octane, Low Expectations. They're a wonderful band. You should go listen to them on Spotify, iTunes, all the other places you can get music. I don't know where you can get music anymore. I'm old. So you should go do that, though. Support them in any way you can. If you're around where you can see them live, go see them live. They're a great band. And also thanks to 25yearslatersite.com for the endorsement. There's a bunch of really talented fucking writers on that site, talking about wrestling, movies, music, video games, TV shows, you name it. Reviews, analysis, recaps, news, all of it. Like, if you fucking can think of it, they probably talked about it at one point or another. So you should go read them. Give them your clicks. It's literally free for you. Go read it. Hey. Next week, as I said, we're going to be talking about Joker, which is the spookiest thing we can possibly do in Halloween. God, forgive us our sins.
I was at the grocery store and a guy was going on about the Red Hood and how they didn't include it because Jack Nicholson wanted to get right to the meat, and he went on a big long Joker rant. He was a nice enough guy, though.
So get ready for that. Bye.
Don't you go into the ground. Don't you go